This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. Today on the show, I've got the one and only game designer, Rich Lescouflair. He is a good pal of mine and a genius when it comes to things like game design, art, layout. He is responsible for the Esper Genesis RPG from Alligator Alley Entertainment, an amazing science fiction RPG that uses the 5th edition D&D engine to power itself. If you love 5e, you're going to love Esper Genesis. They put out a big book of threats that we are going to be talking about. If you love aliens, this is the book for you. Esper Genesis is a very original world, so it's not things like space goblins or space mind flayers or space beholders. It is a world where really cool stuff is happening. I talked to Rich about designing original alien creations, and he's got a lot of great advice. So here is my chat with him. Okay, everybody, now I am here with one of my favorite human beings on this planet or any other planet, okay? Rich Lescouflair, welcome back to Tabletop Babble. For people who don't know, who are you and what do you do in the tabletop role-playing game industry?
I am a game designer and a graphic designer. I work freelance through various companies, including Wizards of the Coast, and I am also one of the Dungeon Masters Guild Adepts, along with one of my favorite people, Mr. James Introcaso. That is you.
That's right. Yeah, and you are one of my favorite people. Very glad for the Guild Adepts because it brought us together.
Yes, absolutely. And it really inspired me to keep going with my current project. I'm a managing partner and a lead designer at Alligator Alley Entertainment. We are producing Esper Genesis, which is the heroic science fiction RPG powered by D&D 5th edition.
That is awesome. It's so great to have you here. Esper Genesis is amazing, and you are one of the few people who does this crazy role-playing game thing full time, right? Like, this is your gig.
Yeah, this is my thing. It is take it from me, folks. It's not all that glamorous, but it is a lot of work, but I do it. It is work that I enjoy. Hoping to turn it into something grander than what it is, and being able to bring fun things to everyone's tabletops is something that I've always wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have achieved it. I mean, we could use our whole time here, this whole episode, just listing off awesome things that you have been involved in and taken the lead on. You're a great designer. And, we've talked in the past about Esper Genesis. It's, a 5th edition version of D&D that was designed not just as like, hey, here's a sci-fi hack of 5th edition, which would be hard enough. It was designed in a way that it could work with 5th edition pretty seamlessly. You described that design before as something that could be wrapped around all of existing D&D and still work more or less. That is an intense and difficult thing to do. And so I'm excited to have you on because you've just released something else, right, for Esper Genesis. Tell me about that.
Yes, we came out with our second core book, which is the Esper Genesis Threats Database. It is a compilation of just a horde of sci-fi baddies and beasties and villains that you can incorporate into all different forms of sci-fi genres. We tried to leave no stone unturned. We kind of made threats for everything from your Star Warsy kind of sci-fi to your Call of Cthulhu to your steampunky to your AI robots, and we tried to cover the entire gamut here. In addition, we expanded how monsters are viewed in 5e. We kind of created some base templates because the galaxy is infinite, so you can kind of run into anything. So we created a lot of little optional tables with base stat blocks, so you can run into just whatever kind of sci-fi creature you want anywhere. And in addition to that, we threw in an entire chapter devoted on major galactic threats, all of their, different plots, how they deal with each other, what effects they could have on your campaign and the galaxy. And, just for kicks, we also threw in hazards for starships and starship crews, wormholes and galactic storms and things of that nature.
Yeah, and we should definitely talk about that because it is a real fascinating thing that we are that you're doing there with Esper Genesis, because we're not talking about, I think sometimes people hear 5th edition science fiction, they think like a goblin in a spacesuit, or a beholder floating around in a space station or something like that. That's not what this is. Esper Genesis is totally new creatures, right? Like we're not seeing space owlbears and things like that.
No, not at all. Each threat that we created is unique, actually. Some of them are even mentioned in the original core manual, like the aberrant and the Lorendi. The cover of the core manual has the Cradron, which is probably about as close as you're going to get to a sci-fi version of a D&D creature, because a lot of people have memories of the aboleth from that thing, but they are still kind of, they're a different creature on their own. They live in a subdimension. We decided to make sci-fi creatures for a sci-fi game, so all of these threats have their own lore. They have their own, like, the aberrants are like, biogenetics gone awry, and then you have, like, the Xenoterrum, who are creatures from alternate dimensions that are trying to bleed their own dimensions into the current galaxy. Things like that, things like the shadow technocracy, who are trying to merge all of humankind with technology. That, those evoke, memories of old sci-fi movies, and even, well, new sci-fi shows, for that matter. And they are all completely different from what you would find in the monster manual. There are no space dwarves or space goblins or or nothing like that other game that other people have mentioned to be. I'm just gonna leave that alone, because
Sure. It might be something about finding stars. So, and again, I don't begrudge people a space goblin or a space dwarf. I think that's great too. But I applaud you, because I think making a bestiary that has creatures who are part of other lore, right? Like if I wanted to go make a Cthulhu bestiary and I wanted to grab, the Gug and the Hound of Tindalos and all that kind of stuff, I would be able to do that. That would still be a ton of work. But if I was like, I'm going to make all of these creatures will be original, right? In some way. I'm sure you've got stuff, like you said, that's inspired by other fiction and that kind of thing. But you've got these things that are, for the most part, wholly original creations that you are working with. That is not an easy thing to make at all, because I bet there's things that get thrown out. There's things that become something totally different by the time, you started one way. They're totally different by the end. There's things you play test that it's like, wow, this wacky mechanic that we tried to get for this wacky creature, we got to rewrite everything. So I am in awe of you, and my hat is off to the whole Alligator Alley Entertainment team for creating this thing. And I wanted to talk with you about Sci-Fi Monsters specifically, right? In your idea, what makes a science fiction monster?
I never really thought about that. What I usually do is because I've watched sci-fi since I was small. Sci-fi was, sci-fi movies, sci-fi shows. Those have been, all my favorite things. And I guess somewhere in the back of my mind, I kind of had concepts of, what sci-fi monsters should be. It's kind of like a mashup of just like the game itself. It's kind of a mashup of everything I've seen since I was a kid. But I do believe that sci-fi monsters, as opposed to, like, fantasy monsters, they have to have a something that makes them just completely not from Earth. Obviously, is the first thing. Something cosmically alien about them that, like, you run into, and it's almost like if you meet this thing for the first time, their abilities or their appearance or just their mannerisms or even their outlook on the universe has to be something completely abstract from what you would be used to, where, oh my, okay, this is really alien. The second thing it would have to be is obviously it would have to have a, especially for space creatures or creatures that can travel, from planet to planet, is they have to be far more versatile in their environment. Space traveling sci-fi threats obviously have to be able to adapt, from planet to planet, and they also, a lot of them also have advanced weapons or defenses that would be able to counter a lot of the new things that were introduced in the core manual.
So when we're talking about things that are alien, right? Things that appear strange or weird, what does that translate to as far as mechanics go, right? Like, are you then also looking for something that is totally unique mechanically, that everything has like a cool mechanical hook?
Not everything. A lot of things are, some have a completely new mechanic that goes along with them. That's like, oh hey, I never really thought about it that way. Like, there's a type of mecharoid, which is like a battle bot, and they can transform into into like a flying vehicle, and yeah, sure, it's like, oh wow, it's a transforming mecha, but if you look at it in the frame of 5e mechanics, it can qualify as a shapeshifter with a couple of different, variations to them. That was kind of the thing we had to do. Was we also needed to make all of these threats usable for any 5e game. Like, I can open the book and I don't have to have the Esper Genesis core manual to use these threats. I can be playing my D&D fantasy game and all of a sudden these robots come and attack everything, and everything's kind of laid out in their stat block what they can do. But when you scale back and then you have other creatures like the Kanasi, for example. So the Kanasi they're artificially intelligent creatures that live within like the galactic matrix, and they have like an overlord and a hierarchy, and they embed themselves into these robotic war machines to interact with the physical environment. That's where the whole like sci-fi element comes in. So when you're when you're facing off with a Kanasi, for example, and let's say you defeat them or you kill them or you destroy their physical form, that Kanasi is still can download into something else. It'll remember you. They can kind of, they can interchange, but now we also have the unique aspect of them is you can also encounter them inside the intergalactic matrix, because that's kind of like their true form in a sense. And then, for that you would actually need the sim rules, the matrix rules that we're introducing. So it's kind of like, creatures that you can fight on or encounter or deal with on two completely different fronts.
One thing that I am wondering, kind of as far as the alien nature of mechanics goes, is what comes first, right? Does the cool story of something like that come first, or does the mechanic come first and then you're like, we're going to make a cool story to go along with this mechanic?
No, the story definitely comes first.
Mm.
What I like to do, especially with the Esper Genesis universe, is kind of give game masters and even players that look at this stuff, give them ideas that they can use to create like a really cool sci-fi story. The D&D monster manual is kind of a big inspiration. I know, yes, I mean a lot of those monsters existed from time immemorial, but if you look at the monster manual, very much like threats database, it's as much a setting book as it is a monster book. You go into the deep lore of everything, which gets established first, and how it interacts with everything in the setting that in the base setting that you put together and how they could interact with anybody's game. And then uh and then the stat block shows up. Usually, actually, the stat block is last. The stat block is last. We wanted, we wanted these things. Like, I came up with the story and kind of the look, and then I commissioned the art, and then once that came back, the story and the art together, when you look at it, you're like, wow, it's this thing, and then you can kind of formulate a, what can it do?
I love that that's how that starts, and then you go from there. You think about, how do I make this into mechanics, right? I do that so often with monsters, especially when it's something wholly original or has a weird alien piece to it.
In the end, the mechanics, just as long as they work, for me, for an RPG, especially, something where you're able to explore, anything, anywhere, should really be the least important thing. It's the most important thing while being the least important thing. It's supposed to be there working in the background, but it's supposed to be that, it's not supposed to overtake your story or your campaign or your setting. It's supposed to make it go. It's that machine that makes it go.
Yeah, totally, right. It propels the story forward, and you know what it's doing, right? I think that's a difficult thing about mechanics, is like writing them in a way that it makes it obvious what is happening in the story. What do you think about art, as far as getting like otherworldly art goes, and things like that? How do you make that happen so everything feels that way?
Well, I was extremely lucky enough to find a few really, really good artists when we were doing when we were originally doing the game. When we did the core manual, we kind of hit. I feel like I hit the lottery on on the artist that I was looking for. So I was just like, yeah, we're gonna stick with you guys.
What are you looking for specifically in the look of alien creatures? What makes them alien visually?
Anything that really would evoke a feeling of wonder. I actually had this conversation with somebody else in another interview, and we kind of discovered that. Well, we didn't really discover. We discussed that fantasy and sci-fi have such a very, very thin line, and the only, that line is when you look at it, it has to look fantastical and still, feel like this is something that, if you were a person from the future, or if you were a person from, like, an advanced age or something like that, you could picture yourself standing in front of this thing, or, and gazing at it. Yeah, it's completely different from you, and it's completely different from anything that you've encountered. But sci-fi is kind of like a genre that works backwards. It's like a future look at our history.
Right.
And if you kind of, if you like fantasy, and you look at, like, fantastical things, and you kind of go, okay, what's like the far future age of this thing, and if it was on another planet, what would it look like, or how would it interact with the environment? This creature would have, would it have multiple legs? Would it have, would it have this? Would it be made of metal? Would it be a plant creature? Would it be? And I think that's where the science aspect comes in,
Right.
You kind of pick the environment that it belongs to. You pick its fantastical form, and then you decide, okay, these are the basics that you want. And the reason why you want really good artists that you can work with, especially with sci-fi stuff, is that you can kind of throw these basics and say, I want, I want a metal creature. I want a metal robot with, like, spider legs and, like, pincer arms, and it has to be able to, like, do these different things, have like a gun, or be able to, like, transform into something. And the artist will go to throw you a sketch and say, how about that? And that's really where it starts. You look at the sketch, and you have to be able to be a very open minded, and be malleable, because that first image that you're looking at, because now you're working directly with the artist and you're looking at it and going, oh, hey, maybe they thought of something that you didn't think of. Maybe they put an elongated torso in there. And I'm like, okay, you know what? That would be really cool. I can do something with that. And then you add more stuff. And usually the end result ends up being very different from how you started, but still looks phenomenal.
So yeah, right. Your artists, I think, especially when you get good ones, like you said, can really take these things in unexpected and good directions. You're like, wow, that's better than anything that was in my head. You talked about at the beginning of this, the threats book sort of spans these different genres of sci-fi, steampunk and Cthulhu horror, and traditional sci-fi, that kind of thing. When you have a setting as big and as rich as Esper Genesis, right? The same way D&D encompasses a lot of things fantasy, and there are there's fantasy horror, there's fantasy pulp and all that kind of stuff. How do you keep the styles of art consistent across the board, and also like the feel of the creatures just in general? Like, these all belong in Esper Genesis and this game that you've created.
When I think of something to encounter, when I think of a space creature, or I think of something that you would put into the galaxy, they all have very similar traits, and I can't I can't exactly define what they are. It's kind of like I have my own envisionment of, just like you would have your own envisionment of, like, what would this sci-fi thing be in your galaxy. We have a discussion, or I usually have a discussion with the artist, and I'll come up with an environment. What's a kind of sci-fi environment that I have? And you have like the list of environments, that we put together in the beginning of the book. It's a space anomaly, water planet, um, factory, or urban ruins, or anything like that. And then I'll take my base of kind of what I figure something would look like, and then I would adapt it to the environment. The nice thing about Aspergenesis is that you can where you have a fantasy environment, and fantasy worlds kind of are constrained in a sense. I guess everything's Earth-like. You can kind of cheat when you're building a game across the galaxy. You kind of say, hey, whatever, it doesn't have to breathe.
Do you have a lot of creatures that are like cross-planetary? You know what I mean? Like, oh, this creature can be found on all these different planets and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we tried to make most of the encounters that way. Uh, some of them are like like the Ketradar. They're primarily water based, and we gave them a home planet. Like, there are a few things that kind of have a home planet. We try to explain in the lore how they could have ended up on other planets, or ended up on being taken as prisoners or pets, or ended up on another ship somewhere. Or we try to include that as best as we can for a few of the threats. For the most part, though, we tried to make the list of threats that we have threats that you could really run into anywhere. From any planet to like a ruined space station, or a spatial anomaly in a subdimension, or something like that. We try to make it so that these things can be encountered anywhere. And then, as far as the planetary stuff, we put that in the appendices. Like, a lot of the NPCs obviously can be encountered anywhere, but the creatures, we created a base, like a set of base stat blocks from, I think, Sierra 1.5 to Sierra 3. And then we created tables that you can adapt traits to. So that way you aren't locked down to anything. So whatever planet you land on, the game master can just kind of pick up one of these blocks, apply some of these traits based on the environment that they're in, and then you have a whole new creature.
The way to apply traits and create a whole new creature is something I really like. So it's something we're actually doing in Burn Bright is a similar thing, because you run into this issue of like, well, you can't necessarily have the same fish on every single planet. It doesn't always make sense. But yeah, having those like, hey, you can tweak this thing this way. You can add a couple of different traits, make it venomous, make it, give it the ability to fly or whatever, and all of a sudden it's something new, is really, really fun. I love that method of design that y'all are doing that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it evokes when you at least look at the options, it evokes the imagination in the game master. Sometimes you can build a whole few sessions based on a creature. So you can say, okay, they landed on this planet. What's on this planet? Once you establish that, what kind of creatures are on there, and then once you put together these creatures, you're like, oh wow, okay, these things can have a story behind them. Where do they nest? Do they interact with anything? Are they anybody's pets? And all of a sudden you have NPCs that crop up, and that's kind of what we're trying to encourage. Is that level of imagination, in games, because even if you're running like a stock, or a store-bought module or a store-bought module. Okay, I've just aged myself, by the way. Pre-written adventure, yes, that's the terminology now, right?
That's right. Although, I mean, it means the same thing, right? Store-bought module.
Effectively
it's a published thing, yeah.
Published adventure. And in our published adventures, we want to try and evoke the same thing, where we're just sort of introducing things in the area that you wouldn't even think about. The types of creatures that you would run into that belong specifically to this planet that you really just wouldn't encounter anywhere else.
There is a lot of fun to be had in that idea. And I think it's, especially for old hats like you and me who have been playing RPGs for more than half their life, right? We get into this thing where it's like every time a new edition of, say, D&D comes out, we look at the monster manual and it's like, cool, this is the beholder for this edition, right? But there's not that much new or unexpected in terms of like story or surprising about the monster. And you have a real opportunity. Everything that you put in this book is going to be surprising to players, pretty much, because it's got that feel of like, whoa, this is totally new and alien. How do you get ideas for sci-fi creatures? What's your inspiration for stuff? Like, do you sit down and think, all right, I got to think up 10 creatures and brainstorm a bunch? Do you bounce ideas off people? Do you write them down as they come to you? What's your method?
Some of the creatures that are in the book, a few of them are actually creations of some of the rest of the team. Chris Negline has a couple, Brian Dalrymple has a couple, Eric Weiner has a couple. Like they kind of gave me concepts and they commissioned their own art for them. So I can't really answer for them, but for me, I have a long list of sci-fi books and movies and shows and video games, in particular, where I sort of recall a memory of looking at this thing and going, ooh, that's awesome. And it's not that you're trying to copy it. You're trying to, take something from it, like that, like I saw a particular creature in this video game and I thought this particular thing about it was awesome. So I want to take that particular thing and apply it to something, to the look of something else that I read in the book. and and then put it on a planet that I saw on a TV show. I wish I could say I'm this like super genius imaginatory stuff that comes up with stuff in like a blink of an eye. No, I don't. I'm just like a really, really big sci-fi fan that likes to put cool things together.
But that's great. And I mean, I think that's a lot of how original content is created. It's a remix of something that already exists, or several things that already exist, right? Like the look of this thing, the attitude of this thing, or the top half of this, the bottom half of this, the environment of this, whatever it is, right? Like taking all that stuff, mixing it around, and then getting ideas from that too. Like, oh, well then if they're like this, maybe this element is part of it now too. Is a big. I call it the steal and twist, which sounds like a cool like football play, but it's not. It's yeah, you take something and change some details about it, and all of a sudden you have a new thing. Like all the time. I get inspiration from like my childhood, like character who maybe was a villain for one episode on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Or weird Power Rangers thing or something like that. And thinking like, okay, why does this stick in my head, right? Like, what is cool about this? Why do I remember this from decades ago? And then go from there.
And bad sci-fi has a has a hand in it too. You can look at concepts and you're like, wow, this is a really cool concept, and you go through and you see the creatures, or you see the the storylines, and you're like, well, that's not how I would have done it. But I'll take this one neat thing about it, and then I'll adapt that into my galaxy.
Yeah, exactly. It's just going to open your mind and open your world and your ability to design. I think the first step towards good design is like being okay with stealing, right? I mean, even look at any major Wizards of the Coast product. You can see some straight up thievery in there. Zardoz Zord showing up. That's a straight lift. They didn't even bother to change his name. And that's fine. And it's okay. And it's fun.
Well, D&D in itself, right? D&D has a base setting. You have elves, you have dwarves, you have, obviously these all came from old, literature, and
I'm pretty sure D&D invented elves.
Oh yeah, sure,
pretty sure that I had read that. Gary Gygax. No, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. They under no circumstances came before D&D. But yeah, that's exactly my point, right? It's a lot of these things came from things that were written or existed before, and the sci-fi is no different. If you want to put together a setting for science fiction, then especially for science fiction fans, you would like for these people that are interested in sci-fi to jump into something completely new, but still have enough familiarity to go, oh yeah, this reminds me of this sci-fi thing that I saw before.
It's a balance too, right? Like, and I think one thing is making yourself feel good about it, right? At what point do you feel like, okay, this is mine now? Like, I have owned this, I've changed enough things, I've combined enough things that I feel like this is mine now. That's always a good point, right? Because that's usually 2 or 3 steps after anybody else would feel bad.
Well, that's that goes to the point about when you're first creating the concept and you're commissioning the art and you're discussing things with people, that you keep a completely open frame of mind. Like unlike sci-fi has so many different threads and so many different genres, and it can literally really just go anywhere. That as long as you put your creation down, you have some basics, you know what you want it to be, and then you can have other sources adapt it. You can by the end of it, just as long as you just like, oh yeah, this, or let's change this, or let's add that, and then at the end you come up with something and you're like, wow, this is completely different from what I thought of, but it's cool. And it's unique, and yeah, this is going in. It's completely unique. But if somebody looks at it, that was kind of the way I wanted to describe it. The goal I wanted is for somebody to look at something and say, hey, that reminds me of this, and then for somebody completely different to look at the same thing and come up with something different that it reminds them of.
Well, Rich, I could talk to you about this all day, but we should get to selling your product a little bit here. So, how many creatures we talking in this threats database?
There's I think a little over 200 stat blocks.
Whoa!
In the book.
Holy moly!
Yeah, there's there's also in addition to the stat blocks, I had forgot to. I think I had mentioned the space hazards. before. So there's a few tables that that you can use. Let's say you're not, on foot. Let's say you're on your ship, and we decided that to put that in this book also. Space hazards count as threats: a nebula cloud, space debris, an asteroid, things that you as a crew have to navigate through and deal with, while all of a sudden that that weird, space wraith, appears on your ship, and you got to deal with that too. But we pulled that in, and we also created, in addition to the regular threats, we have 3 so far, but we're going to introduce more in the technician's guide. We have threats that are large enough, like large gargantuan creatures that are space dwelling, so they can also fight starships. So they themselves have a different stat block for that. What's their stat block against your ship, and we made sure to incorporate that.
Man, I can't wait, Rich. In fact, I should let people know I do have my hands on a copy of this, and it is very good. People should definitely check it out. The art, there's like a ton of, it looks like original art for many of these original creatures. Am I right in saying so?
Most of the art that we put together in the book is original art, done by many of the artists that did art for the core manual: Santi Casas and Tano Sim, Matthew Mislinski, Marcus Vogt, who is amazing. He his a lot of his stuff, and a lot of Santi's stuff. Like, we look at them, and it actually gives us more ideas to do more stuff. So we wanted, again, right, to create something new, and you can't really create something that's unique compared to the rest of D&D without actually having cool art that evokes, like, okay, wow, okay, this is what this setting is, versus anything else that we played in. We have the PDF out. I think it's been out for maybe a little over a month. Last week, I went over the physical proofs from our printer, which look amazing. I'm super stoked and excited about that. And we just sent those off. So we should probably be having some print copies coming up. Hopefully very soon. I know the backers have been waiting for them for a while. I don't. It's been a bit.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you've had your hands full doing a lot of stuff. So this is incredible. Well, if people want to learn more about Esper Genesis and about you, where should they go and what should they do?
If you want to learn more about the game in general, you can go to aspergenesis.com. That will take you to the homepage, and there's a ton of links on there that'll take you to all the stuff that we're selling, including the threats database, which is now available on DriveThruRPG as well as the core manual. If you want a just kind of like a taste of the game, we also have our free version, which includes a few of the threats that are also in the threats database. That you can also download in PDF format. There are links that explain to you the different characters and the classes, and can also take you to our portal that goes to our organized play campaign, which is the Crucible Core, which we should also hopefully have some more adventures coming out for soon.
Yes. Organized play. Yes. Esper Genesis. Cleaning up. So people should definitely check it out. And what if they want to follow you, Rich Lescouflair, amazing designer, creator, and RPG or extraordinaire?
RPG or, well, you can find me on Facebook. You can actually go to the Esper Genesis Facebook page. We have one of those. We also have an Instagram page and a Twitter page. Twitter is, I believe, just at Aspergenesis. Instagram is at Aspergenesis5E. Me personally, I am at Skydawn, SKYDAWN. No, at Skydawn1. Yes, at Skydawn and number 1 on Twitter. At Skydawn, that's somebody else. Don't bother them.
Right.
If you want to reach out to any of the team at all, we're almost always, navigating through the Facebook or the Twitter page. You can also contact us directly through the website on our contact page if you have any questions at all that we are able to or willing to answer.
Well, there you go. That is excellent to hear. And people should definitely follow you. Check out Esper Genesis. Check out Alligator Alley Entertainment and all of the amazing things it has to offer. Thank you so much for coming on to talk with me about creatures and sci-fi today, Rich. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. As always, it is fun to talk to you on or off the mic at any point in time.
Wow, what a great conversation with Rich. People, if you love the conversations that are happening every week on Tabletop Babble, guess what? We could use your help financially supporting the show. If you're already contributing to my Patreon, thank you so much. I appreciate the support. You cannot believe how much I love every single one of you. If you're not supporting yet and you have the money to throw our way, please consider it. Tabletop Babble is part of your life, possibly every week, and we work hard to make this show happen. It costs a lot of time and a lot of money to bring it your way. So if you can support the show, head on over to patreon.com/Introcaso. Check out all the rewards, but the real reward is the Patreon helps bring this show to you every week, which you're already getting. And hey, if you're already supporting us or you can't afford to, I totally understand. It totally makes sense to me. Guess what? You can support us for free as well by heading on over to iTunes, leaving us a 5-star review. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts right now, guess what? You can just punch on over into your app while you're listening and hit that 5-star button. If you leave us a review, I will read it out loud. You can make me say anything you want. Like Care Bear Nukes from Australia, who left a review entitled Best Topical Role-Playing Podcast Out There. This review says, James makes listening easy and interesting with a well-balanced host of guests who give some of the best RPG advice. I have listened to every episode and am always keen to listen more at any chance I get. I think James is a wonderful person who makes games accessible to everyone and creates a fantastic forum for them. Despite the distance between the USA and Australia, you still manage to connect people all over the world. Thank you, James. You have made my tired mornings and evenings coming home from work an absolute delight and interest. Keep up the excellent work. Wow, thank you so much, Care Bear Nukes. I really appreciate it, and I love that you've listened to every episode. Me too. Thank you so much. All right, people, if you want to follow me and find out where I'm going, what I'm doing, go on over to worldbuilderblog.com and twitter.com/James Introcaso. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Thanks to Rudy Basso for founding it with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by Battle Bards. Don't forget, RPGs are like sex.